Catch up on the hottest panels from Pulse 2026, the UK's leading conference for retail and e-com professionals. Whether you couldn't attend or had FOMO from sessions you missed on the day, there's no need to miss out on this amazing content. It's all available now on Inside Commerce. Dig in and enjoy.
I'm very happy to introduce Vicky, Ross, Sara, and Alister. They're going to be talking about experiences that travel, scaling globally in the era of connected commerce. Please give them a big round of applause.
Hello everyone and good afternoon. Very excited to be here today and speaking to these wonderful panelists. We were meant to have a third brand join, so we've invited our wonderful brand strategist on stage, Ross, who will introduce himself in a second. But fundamentally, we want to dig into how these amazing brands have scaled globally without losing what makes them distinctive. I think so often we focus on the storefront, the storytelling, the design, but so much is won in the back end, in the operations. When everything sort of all works together in one, hey presto, we've made it. So we're going to dig into that today. So without further ado, I'd love for you guys to introduce yourselves today. So please introduce yourself, your role, and for anyone new to the brand, what's that one thing that makes you distinctive that you wouldn't want to lose as you scale globally? Alister.
I'm Alister. I'm Director of Technology and Operations at Rat & Bow. Rat & Bow is a founder-led, founder-owned clothing brand. We're known for our bold prints. We like to think when customers purchase a dress from us, they're buying it for a specific moment. It could be a wedding in Italy, a holiday in Ibiza. As we scale, we don't want the customers to lose that feeling that when they buy something from us, it's been made with real intent by people who care.
I'm the e-com manager at Studio Nicholson and also a founder-led brand. Still very much embodies the our founder and her experience with fashion and her travels, which you also see in the clothing. I would say much more so than talk about brand, I would like to talk about the product. It's all about product. It's the materials that we work with. It is the shapes that we do, and I think we do that really well. So yeah, it's product first rather than brand.
Hey, Ross, global brand advisor at Swap. So advise on a lot of product side. I've got a 14-year history as an e-com director, working with many different high growth brands. But yeah, now kind of working on the SaaS side and helping advise the next steps of what the product look like.
Amazing. And just to go into that a little bit more, Sara, in terms of you're so sort of product focused and brand led. So as you have sort of expanded into different markets, how have you ensured that sort of stays true to your brand, as you've expanded sort of out the domestic market?
I think we do most of what we can, especially with the copy on our website. We put a lot of emphasis on the materials and how we sort of develop those. You know, most of our stuff is it's cut by our patent team in-house, it's designed in-house, it's merchandised in-house. Like, everything we do is still very much centered around that. So we've got that easy access to information, which I think is probably our greatest asset in that sense. But once again, you know, we're still a fairly small, lean team, not the biggest company. So in that sense, we're doing what we can in terms of translating that online. That's often through words, and it's our top of funnel marketing and the way that we spread that to customers. I think it was word of mouth for the longest time, but now we're sort of still dabbling and I think learning when it comes to figuring out how to best present it without screaming about it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I love it. And coming to you, Alister, again, similar, it's about the spirit of the brands, still sort of founder-led. I know the US is a big market for you guys, and our good friend Trump made that challenging last year. It'd be good for you, Jess, to just talk through sort of how you've still managed to sell into the US and some learnings there.
Yeah. At the beginning of last year, the US was our biggest market at Rat & Bow. Obviously, when the tariffs came into place, that disrupted that. So as a revenue share, we're close to about 35%. When the tariffs came in, that dropped to 15%. through April and May. So we had a decision to make. We either had to look at opening a warehouse in the US or move to a B2B2C model like Swap Global. We went with Swap Global. I think we were up and running by about the 6th of June. And throughout the summer, we saw that revenue share increase to about 20%. And by the end of last year, we're back up to 35%. So it's been good.
And the sort of end customer, they've not been affected by these changes?
No, we chose to bake the duties into the price. We didn't want the country of origin and tariffs to be a decision the customer had to make when they got to the checkout. So we baked those into the price. As far as the customer is concerned, we're the same Rattenbow as we were 12 months before, and that reduces the friction of the checkout.
Anything to add there, Ross?
Yeah, and I'd say I've seen brands tackle it a few different ways. Some people obviously shut down. I think a lot of the brands that we saw last year was obviously using like a B2B2C methodology. And others obviously went with just kind of basic calculations, right, via the Swap Global product. But yeah, I mean, I've seen brands tackle it a lot of different ways. I think still there's a lot of benefits to keeping things housed within the UK as a UK Incorp and not setting up over the other side and just doing the calculations. But I think if you're really trying to scale from a volume perspective, I do think there's that value in B2B2C and actually pushing forward a little bit further. But yeah, I wouldn't say much to add, but I think it's interesting how all of the brands that I've seen at Swap work with it in different ways. You know, some people are going all in and going on the B2B2C route, setting up an entity, pushing it forward, and then other people are just doing more calculations led and how do we kind of localize using Shopify markets or, you know, any kind of other markets solution.
Amazing. And yeah, we've spoken about sort of international trade and sort of selling the product to wherever your customers are. Returns are a natural thing in fashion. We don't always get it right. There's sizing. People want to size up, size down, you name it. So specifically on sort of, looking at both sort of domestic and international returns, sort of how have you sort of managed that as you've scaled, but also what insights from returns have you then sort of, put back into the business and made some operational changes? Alister.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think as soon as we started looking at returns is some of the highest value feedback you can get from a customer. It enables us to make some changes. Like more recently, we took all our returns data, passed it through Claude, got some really good insights out of there. We've been able to pass those insights through the production teams, e-com teams, paid media. That could be improvements to the product garment if we're making this sort of similar silhouette in the future. With the e-com teams, it's how do we help the customers make a more informed choice when they come to select their sizing. And with paid media, we saw a lot of our best sellers on paid media with high returns rates. As we started to pull back media spends on some of those products.
I love that because I think so often there's so much sort of insights in returns, and it can often just sit in a returns tool. And how do we get it back into the business and sort of influence new decisions and what comes next? Sara, anything to add there in terms of sort of the returns journey domestically and internationally?
I think, especially this past year with US not being out of the picture for us, but they've definitely taken a step back in comparison to what we saw before, which is also a shame because it was doing really well and it was promising. So we've sort of had to scale into and trying to prioritize other markets in that case. And I think what we've learned a lot as well is that returns in many ways is also just like a vanity metric. You can still be very commercially sound, even though that you're seeing increasing returns across certain products, for example. I think what we've seen scaling into other markets is that though we're about the same level as we were last year, we are seeing people buying less in newer markets, returning more, but also it's a whole piece looking into your customer acquisition. These are new customers. Do they know your brand? It's specific silhouettes. It's not always easy to figure it out. So I think returns in many ways has been a big part for us as well. But just as Alister said, I'd like to echo that we also do our part, I would say, in trying to pull qualitative as much as quantitative data and sharing that with the teams.
I'd probably say that like returns insights are one of the key things across a business that you can use to kind of scale and understand where some of the gaps are. I think like definitely like in my experience, I've seen, some people that are running at like maybe even 30, 40, 50% returns and just thinking that that's acceptable. So I guess the benchmarks kind of sit between 19 and 22% for most brands. I know activewear kind of tips up slightly, but just in terms of how people are using those insights, I know like some of the stuff that Swap have been doing with the AI overviews, for example, within the returns product are really useful just for like the commercial side of a business. But also from Alister, from your perspective, I guess like you guys are using global and returns and you can kind of like feed that data back into market insights. So yeah, I think the two areas I'd say brands getting it wrong at the minute for the most part is like that conversion rate optimization piece on site in terms of how you handle multi-markets, but then also feeding in that global and returns insight to optimizing that, I would say, is a big area of focus where a lot of brands should be looking at the moment.
Amazing. And sort of further to that, the storefront is where the demand happens, but really operations is where the trust is earned. What sort of operational inputs, I mean, we've spoken about a couple, but have really informed the storefront and merchandising decisions that you've seen? Alister, coming to you.
For us, it's pre-orders. For the last couple of years, we've been launching collections ahead of time using pre-orders and also getting reorders back onto the store earlier. And it works in two ways. We're capturing demand a lot earlier than we previously would if we're waiting for that stock to land into the warehouses. But we're also taking that data and piping it into our demand planning software and informing reorders ahead of time. More recently with our spring-summer collection, we sold out, we put a reorder in. Part of that reorder is already sold out before it's hit the warehouse. So again, we're going to get another reorder in, so it kind of feeds into itself.
Amazing. I love that. Really good insights. Fabulous. We're taking a little bit of a tangent, and it wouldn't be a panel if we weren't talking about AI. And Alister, you've spoken about a couple of nice use cases of using return data and getting it into Claude, which I absolutely love. We'll dig into that a little bit more. But specifically about agentic commerce, and there's been a lot of focus on this today. This can mean a lot of different things depending on sort of what angle you're coming from. I mean, there's a lot of buzz around brands ensuring you're indexing your catalog correctly in GBTs and from a discoverability perspective. And we've seen brands such as sort of Sephora investing in ChatGPT and Gap in Gemini. The big challenge that we're seeing there is that though it's not a brand-owned experience, the LLM owns that, they own the data, and fundamentally they want to keep customers searching on there because that's how they make their money. And specifically, we've been talking about sort of what makes that brand, your brand's the spirit, the design, like how do we keep that alive in an AI era? So Swap is sort of, launching into an agentic storefront, which has been very exciting. And we really want to be sort of the first brand-owned experience, end-to-end, from discovery, search, virtual try-on, and actually checking out within that experience. And it's very exciting that Studio Nicholson has been part of our sort of first pilot cohort that have gone live on the agentic storefront. So Sara, I'd love for you to share with the audience today, your experience today, sort of, experience with the storefront, but also where you see agentic commerce going as a business and some changes that you guys are making.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting thing to try out. I think in many ways we're always trying to replicate the actual experience that people have in store. And people shop in different ways, and you can also see that with AI. They either hate it or they love it. It's a very polarizing topic in that sense, but it's been a great way of learning more about our customers. That sort of like feedback surveys on how they have used it, and also seeing that top of funnel action. There's a lot of interest there. We're still iterating a little bit on how and where we can sort of add that added value, because it does have something that our traditional storefront doesn't. Vice versa, our traditional storefront has also got something, and it's about, I think, finding a middle way. But as with anything new, especially AI, that I think we're still learning loads about. It requires a certain level of iteration and going back and forth and more customer data as well, which is good.
Amazing. And Ross, you've been very close to sort of launching this with our customers in the early encore, what am I trying to say? That one. Yeah, any insights to share in terms of the agentic era we're in right now?
Yeah, I think like brands going forward will have 3 different ways of shopping, right? They'll have the traditional .com, which I think won't fundamentally change in terms of its infrastructure. I think people will still continue to do what they do on store now ongoing. I think, people will embed different parts of AI on their .com. And I think to some degree that will work. It will help with different things. But what I've noticed with the agentic storefronts that Swap are building is they're a little bit more focused towards that end-to-end experience. That how do you bring a customer on in an agentic experience, actually inform them, help them discover, try things on, actually go to the checkout, post-purchase, customer service, all within one flow. And I think the broader ecosystem of that will grow obviously along with the product. But I think you'll see people shop on .coms, you'll see people shop on .ai, you'll see people shop on ChatGPT and Gemini, and even like Josh was showing us this morning, the kind of Gemini buy for you, it can phone stores and order things for you, find out where the stock is. Brands are going to need to have access to that, right? You can't just expect them all to run everything through Google. Google own all of their data and they have no access to that. We need to enable brands to do that themselves as well. And I think that's one of the biggest risks I see at the minute, which I think Swap have probably got the best solution for out there at the minute, just in terms of having that brand owned experience. And I think that will grow as the technology grows and it will get more intelligent. It will learn to convert. And I think one of the things that I've noticed in some of the storefronts like Studio Nicholson's launch is that conversion gradually compounds over time. So it starts to get more intelligent about the customers. Like Sara said, you also get a lot more data, which obviously has been dropping off for a course of time now as they did iOS 14 update. Cookies are absolute pain in the arse basically to get any kind of decent rich data out of. So I do think things will change, and I think that's what will be really useful is the agentic storefronts won't only add value from like a conversion and experience perspective, but they'll also add value to the broader ecosystem, even .com. So I think there will be parts where customers will, have deep links on the PDP when they want to try something on. They'll go into the agentic storefront, maybe come back to the .com, and then kind of move amongst them, and the data will be one shared pool of data. But I don't just think the .com will be the future of what commerce looks like. I think AI will gradually kind of compound as the key sales channel, and the .com will always probably exist, but for a very specific cohort of customers.
Super, super interesting. We're in an era, aren't we? And Alister, specifically for you, you've done some really interesting things sort of internally using AI, both to sort of inform product and sort of the role you do. Could you share that with the audience, please?
Yeah, we've probably been using AI across our dev teams for the last couple of years. So I'd say their roles are almost LLM native now. Most of the code we ship touches on AI in some way. That allows us to push features, being more ambitious what we do on low budgets. Across the trade and digital teams, we've been using Polar Analytics a lot, pulling that data back into Claude, doing a lot of analysis. More recently, we've been looking to see how we can use AI as part of our production process. So that's getting our data in a structured way that we can start doing things like analyzing our sampling data, pulling it back into Claude again. We've also been experimenting with Nano Banana on color ups with different fabrics, different silhouettes, and that's really sped up our sampling process.
I love it. Super inspiring. And yeah, we are. The changes we're going to see over the next few months is just going to compound over time. Amazing. So we've got 55 seconds left. So one question to ask all the panelists. The biggest lesson you've learned as you've scaled globally in the markets that you sell in?
Yeah, scaling globally isn't just about localization. I think it's getting your ops in a good place to scale. I think for the ops a good place, like what the customer sees is standardized, and what's underneath is what is different. We localize per market through operations.
Sara?
It just happens before you're ready for it, really, in many ways. I think it's, if you want to do it effectively, figure out what are the similarities between your customers and those markets, and cater to that as much as you can, because, it's going to happen before you know it.
Yeah, I guess like my main one, a founder once said to me, the shit sells itself. I think it's probably the most untrue statement I've ever heard in my life. I agree with what Alister and Sara both said, but I would also say that the shit doesn't sell itself, and you do need to have a 360 strategy to everything, right? So like connected ops is one piece of that, conversion is another piece of that, having rich data to be able to make decisions is another piece of that. So I think one of the things where brands fail is actually just thinking that the product's just going to work and that you're not going to have operational challenges and you're not going to have those things. And then by the time you get there, you've already been screwed over so badly by duties and taxes charges or returns hits, or inventory management is another one you mentioned, Alister. So I think being prepared for that is a key one before you do that front end piece. You need to ensure that the operations are stable. And I'm not an ops expert like Alister, for example, but I definitely think it's something that brands get wrong still to this day, and definitely seen Swap do a lot of amazing work with that.
So true. I think, we're the storefront and the operational back end, they're not two different things. They all complement each other, and we can't just sort of sit with silo teams anymore and hope for the best, because that's not the world we live in. Well, thank you so much for the panelist day. If everyone could join me with a round of applause to our fantastic panel. And thank you very much.